Redditors who have nearly been murdered, but talked your way out of it. What did you say to your would-be killer that saved your life? I was babysitting for my cousins, aged 5 and 3. I was 14 at the time, and the 5-year-old found his dad's handgun and was waving it around like a toy. He was pointing it at things and pretending to shoot them, not putting his finger on the trigger thankfully, and at one point he pointed it at me and pretended to be a bank robber. I told him if he handed me the gun he could go get the package of Oreos on the counter and we could have some. It actually worked, and I stuck the gun on a high shelf until my aunt and uncle came home. As it turned out, the gun was loaded. My aunt made my uncle buy a gun safe and put all the guns in the garage after that. TL. Doctor, for the love of God, don't leave your firearms where your young children can find them. No matter how much you tell them it's not a toy, they will still treat it like a toy. I'm 19. First time in Europe. Started in Italy visiting relatives, and first night I went out for a walk. Group of guys looking like trouble pushed me around and then showed me their knives demanding money, which I seemed to obviously have since I stood out as a foreigner by my clothes. Except all I had on me was $20 and a condom, because I was so naive from hearing how easy it was to get laid. I was expecting local girls to just see me and approach me to have sex. So I explained this to these guys in broken 1960s Italian gleamed from my parents. They laughed their ass off and wished me luck. My brother was attacked in our house by a guy with a knife. My brother didn't know the guy had a knife when he put the guy in a headlock. When he whistled for dad, the guy dropped the knife and covered his ear. By the way, my brother can whistle at about 120 dB, louder if he's angry. So, my brother pulled the guy's hand off his ear, put his mouth down to the guy's ear, and just whistled as loudly as he could 4 or 5 times. When dad got to them and threw the guy out the door, the guy couldn't even stand up straight as his equilibrium had been thrown completely off. He's probably still deaf. Cousin with mental health issues threw a table at me but missed. He grabbed the leg and put me to the ground and shouted, "I'm gonna fucking kill you. Smash your skull." I responded with, "If you're going to do that, let's not do it in front of our family." Slightly different based on his medical mental condition, but for some reason, that brought him back. I talked my way out of getting stabbed when I was being robbed. I don't know if he would have murdered me, but definitely would have fucked me up. I just told him to chill and put the knife away, and he could have whatever the fuck he wanted. So he put his knife away and went through my shit while I stood there annoyed. I went for breakfast with a girl right after and carried on with my day. I was accosted by a young kid with a gun. He couldn't have been more than 13. I can't remember the exact conversation, but basically, the kid looked at me and said, "Give me anything you have, and I'll let you go." I wanted to freak out, but something in me said to remain calm. I said something like, "Is that a real gun or an airsoft?" And he pulled out the clip. Sure enough, it was real, surprisingly. I said, "Look, kid, I don't have anything but $5 and this shitty phone. That isn't going to really get you anything. Is this really worth life in prison if you shoot me?" He looked at me, looked at the gun, looked at me, started crying, and turned around and walked away. I did call the police and alert them that there was a kid walking around 14th Street brandishing a firearm, but by the time they got to where I was, the kid was long gone. I pointed the cops in the direction he went and what he looked like and all that stuff, but I'm not sure whatever came of it. I almost got knifed in the Dominican Republic by these 2 kids in this tiny town, Bayahibe. They saw me walking around at night and came to my hotel with knives. I was out on the balcony in front of my room and they come up to me not saying a word, but brandishing large enough knives. So I put my hands up and real cool like reached in my pocket and handed them like $200 local currency and they ran off. The kicker is, my wife was in an unlocked room right there with like maybe $2,500 and all of our shit. And I made enough noise about it talking calmly, but loudly enough that I heard the door lock. Thank God. My first thought was, okay, they want money. My second was, what if they get in that room with my wife? That second question still fucks with me. Anyways, so this town is small, and I walked over to the police station and explained what happened, and the cops are like, "Oh yeah, we probably know who it is." Come back tomorrow morning at 9 and we'll have you identify them. Came back at 9 and they had both of them in custody. Never did get my money back, but whatever. I'm not entirely sure how close I was to being murdered. This took place back when I worked the register at McDonald's. It was around 10. We weren't 24-hour and would be closing up soon. And in walks a guy that's drunk off his ass. He comes up to the counter and starts chatting with me about nothing in particular, mostly nonsense I can't remember, but I started to get the impression he wasn't just drunk. I'm doing my best to just humor him, waiting for him to leave when out of nowhere he says, "If I was gonna kill everyone in here, I'd kill you first, because you look like you'd know what to do." A bit of a morbid joke I thought and said thanks. At this point he pulled out a gun from his waistband and pointed it at me. It wasn't like a full-on point, more like he was limply holding the gun in my general direction. I didn't know what to do and only hoped to God he was still joking. He then said bang and tucked the gun back into his waistband. I think that he just wanted to let me know that he could kill me if he wanted to. He left shortly after that. I informed my manager and was later told that man was both a regular and longtime friend of my manager who tried to downplay what had happened. I left that job shortly after for school. My friend's mother was bringing in the groceries. As she was walking the bags up the stairs, she turned to find a man who had snuck into the garage after her car, pointing a rifle at her. "SHHHH," she said, with a finger to her lips. "You have to get out of here. You're going to be in big trouble." He looked around, panicked, and ran. Didn't happen to me, but my dad was getting gas in a particularly sketchy part of town that he wasn't usually in. A man approaches my dad as he is filling his gas tank, points a gun at my dad and shouts, "Give me your wallet." Instead, my dad pulls the gas nozzle out of his truck and sprays the guy. At the time, my dad smoked and pulled out his Zippo lighter and begins to strike it. The best part is that the robber called the police on my dad for trying to light him on fire. In the end, my dad got away with nothing, and the other guy got hauled away in a police car. I don't know if he wanted to murder us, but was definitely up to no good. My mom and I were just walking somewhere. I don't remember to where, I was much younger, but it was in the south of France somewhere. There was a guy who came around the corner and got in our way, telling us he has a gun in his pocket, probably BS, and that we needed to give him everything to pass. My mom grew up in Paris and walked through shady parts when she was younger and knows how to react, so she just straight up told him no thanks, slapped his shoulder a little to push him out of the way, and we went by him. Not me, but my dad. He was about 25 at the time, probably 35 years ago now. He lived in a bad neighborhood, and after getting a pack of 6 from a 7-Eleven, he was sitting in his car for a second and a young guy came up to his window with a gun. My dad said, "Give me all your money or I'll kill you right here, right now." He said, "Look, I have $30, and frankly, that fucking money is mine. You're going to have to kill me for it. Is it worth the blood of a human and most likely life in prison for $30 fucking dollars?" He said the guy had this type of well whatever attitude about it, gave him a goodbye tap on his car like he just came up to say hello, and walked away. He said the guy was really casual about it. Oddly so. He didn't sleep well for a few months after that experience. This is actually not my story, but my boyfriend's. Some men broke into his childhood home while he, his brother and his mother were all there and made them get on the ground asking where someone was. Turns out the neighbor was a drug dealer and they got the house wrong. They threatened his family, but then figured out they were in the wrong house and left, stealing on the house wireless landline. Oddly enough, they didn't take cell phones. Nearly been murdered is maybe a bit over exaggerated, but I was surrounded by 10 neonazis with baseball bats once. They were known to sometimes just beat the shit out of people for fun. But I was drunk as fuck, so I just laughed all the time while they did stupid stuff like pushing me. So they had their fun and then let me get into my taxi without beating me up with baseball bats. Dunno if this counts, but I was alone by a lake one evening a few years ago. Insects were humming around, their wings glistening in the fading sunlight, and fish swam near my feet. It was super chill, and I've rarely felt more peaceful until someone moved in the bushes. Now, normally I would have ignored this. People came and went from this spot fairly frequently, It was a popular maquillette spot. But something felt off this time. The person was taking too long, like they were trying to be quiet. I thought maybe it was a couple messing around, so I got to my feet and started to leave. As I turned to the exit, a man stepped from the bushes. He had a metal rod in one hand and a cord in the other. My first thought was that he was just collecting trash. But a second later, before I could even register why, I was suddenly, viscerally angry. I wanted to hurt this man more than I've ever wanted to hurt anyone before. I think he saw the crazy in my eyes or something though, cause he hesitated and forced this weird smile. I was unarmed, but I slowly reached around my back, like I was putting my hand on a gun, and he moved back into the bushes. A few moments later he re-emerged empty-handed and asked how the fish were today. I said good, flashed a smile, and left. One time, my mother was driving down to Tanzania with my uncle while she was pregnant with me. It was early in the afternoon, so she was extremely shocked to find a bunch of armed robbers waiting on the side of the road, like a bunch of hyenas waiting for their prey to come to them. They started waving their guns around, telling my uncle and mother to come out of the car. I believe that they had the intention to kill. However, this is where it gets interesting. The leader of that gang took one look at my mother's belly, saw that it had a bump, and simply let them go away. My mother tells me that when the leader saw that she was pregnant, his eyes filled with remorse. Maybe he had been a former father as well. Anyway, they took my uncle's wallet and bade us goodbye. To this day, I keep on telling my uncle that I saved his life. I don't know if this guy was going to murder us, but it was super sketchy. My mom and I were walking back from a baseball game one summer after I got back from college. My mom had had a few, so I was driving. On the way back some sketchy dude started following us. I took a turn towards our car in a parking lot and he started muttering things. I told him to go away, but he ignored me. I gave my mom my shirt I got at the game and told her to run to the car. The dude then lunged at me after she took off, so I body slammed him and he landed on his ass and I ran to the car, locked it and we flew out of there. That was a scary yet exhilarating moment and we just drove home after that. I live near a pretty bad city, so things like this are expected, so we saw no point in calling the police or the stadium security, but it was frightening nonetheless. My best friend growing up had an uncle with a bad temper. That, along with severe little man syndrome. Anyways, I was leaving her house one night after we'd hung out and studied together for school. While I walked around the cul-de-sac she lived on, I was grabbed from behind, and whoever it was trying to put me in a headlock. I could tell they were much shorter than me. I was nearing 5 feet 10 by the time I was 14, and this person couldn't have been more than 5 feet 5 at the maximum. Naturally, I put my chin down to stop them and flipped the fucker over my shoulder using everything that I had. I looked, and lo and behold, it's the fucking uncle. I asked him what the fuck man. And he said, don't fight me and it won't hurt so bad. I was terrified, but I knew this guy, so I said, come on, what's this about? Why are you doing this? He did nothing but growl and the look in his eyes said that he wasn't backing down. He'd recovered pretty quickly from my flip, but I swung my book-filled backpack when he charged me at his face, and he just hit the ground after that. I ran back to my friend's house and told her dad everything. He went back out and beat the shit out of his brother. I wasn't allowed to go to her house ever again after that. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.